Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Emily Sophia and I'm going to be walking you guys through the latest episode of Hannibal, so spoiler alert before we dive into the mad thick of things. And I need to warn you that this particular evening I am especially exhausted. I've spent a few nights this week waiting until the midnight before a paper is due to actually write them. And the sleeplessness is starting to take its toll, so I'm going to do my very best to tackle what was an incredibly complex and robust episode with very little energy and a little bit of wine in my system, and I'm a little, as far as processing and deep analysis and connecting every single piece, I might not be all there. So I ask for your forgiveness in that respect, and if there's anything that I fail to touch on or fail to expand on in great depth, then I encourage you to drop some bombs in the comments and we'll have some fun chats there. So without further ado, my personal reactions to this week's episode, which we all knew was going to be a doozy, especially after the loss of Beverly so abruptly at the end of last week's episode. And so we were kind of dealing with the fallout from that, and then the course of action that Will is taking accordingly in his endeavor to pin Hannibal, to get this freaking monster what he deserves, but without, causing any other casualties at his own hands. It's really fascinating and quite ironic to see how Will Graham has sort of placed himself in a Hannibal-esque position in terms of the way that he is enacting his will through others. Just as Hannibal enacted his own will, his own desires of seeing just what he could do with Will Graham's mind in the first season. Although arguably, we discovered a couple episodes back Will's epiphany in mind's eye view on what Hannibal was really doing to him over the course of all their delightful bromantic little get-togethers and the injections and the inducing of seizures and everything. So I mean, the lines blur at times, but let's break down really quick all of the different steps that Will Graham had to go through in order to bring everyone closer to an awareness of who Hannibal is. Because we're in this delightful little matrix, this world where one cannot simply cry wolf, but rather you're forced to get all the other sheep to confront the other sheep and figure out which one is not playing the sheepy game quite on par, okay? It's not as simple as just dropping a name and going forward when it comes to Hannibal, and that's part of the madness and mayhem of the series, is he's kind of this Bermuda Triangle. You can't touch him, and when you're in his presence, everything is obscured and thrown off, and you are either seduced or made mincemeat of. So kind of one side of the spectrum or the other. The longer you know Hannibal, the closer to one end you're getting. So yeah, you got to keep tabs on the status of your relationship as time goes on, because you can't really afford to let things slip. Hannibal's is not exactly a biblical form of love. Love is patient, kind, and enduring, forgiving of wrongs. He tallies up the rude. it has an impact, you get your score, and it places you at one violent side or the other. So at any rate, so first and foremost, we've got Will, and he's behind bars, but by no means is his mind. And I think that's something that made this episode really difficult for me to process. Was, it was very much like a Salvador Dali kind of painting. The entire episode itself was crazily surreal. It makes it just the plot, the structure, the visuals, basically every single component. It was like, what is that one particularly famous Dali painting? Is it The Persistence of Memory, perhaps? I think I might be in the ballpark there. I went through a bit of a Dali phase my freshman year of college, so I have all these, titles and images in my mind. But, if you're familiar with that particular artist's work, then you kind of get what what I'm referring to. With all of Will's dreams and imaginings and the sounds that he hears, there's this constant dripping noise throughout many parts of the episode when Freddie Lowndes is in the observatory and she is drawing nearer to the body of Beverly, and there's that dripping and that blood, and Will Graham experiences something similarly on a mental level while he is in his cell, while arguably, or hopefully from his perspective, the justice that he is requested from the orderly, or shall we call him the disorderly, is being done. But then we see that his cup is overflowing, or the sink is pouring over, and the blood cascading, and how that bleeds into the image of the near crucifixion of Hannibal Lecter, which was just an absolutely wild episode. I found myself shut up most of the time. I mean, I like to kind of make commentary as I go. I tend to watch with my brother and others sometimes, and we, to kind of keep things light, we kind of interject our own, impose our own dialogue and stuff of that nature. But in this episode, I was just so transfixed and glued and just sort of horrified. It was a difficult episode to endure. I mean, as full of all the fun and macabre ironies as you could possibly want from this show, but at the same time, just really, really tough. My brain hurts. Even I just can't deal with it. At any rate, so we've got Will, and he feels horribly, obviously, about what has happened with Beverly, and the fact that her passion to follow the evidence not only made them confidants to one another over time. They were able to have this connection in which they were able to objectively explore how Hannibal could be the Ripper, how he could be their guy, and of course we have some of the classic Silence of the Lambs iconography explored as we see Will Graham is placed in the lockdown suit and wheeled out to the crime scene that Freddie discovered earlier on, and Jack brings him in there to get his perspective. But really, for Will Graham, it's more of a moment to say goodbye. It's the only way that he can get himself to move forward, and unfortunately, it's just another window in on his dearly beloved cannibal compadre, whom he knows quite well already. So he's just brought, even closer to just to the ghastly awareness of who Hannibal truly is. And I think it's fascinating because the way that Hannibal went about disposing of Beverly actually kind of symbolized and spoke to her character, to again, in the way that Will Graham visualizes her in his mind as well, as she's kind of chastising him for becoming emotional at the scene, saying, this is about the evidence, you're just getting the evidence and moving forward. She's very clean-cut, analytical, organized, and just incredibly pragmatic in her approach. And that is the way that Hannibal slices and dices her up. You know, everybody gets a special treatment, and it's his twisted way of honoring his worthy adversaries and fallen friends, you know. So do feel special, even if you come under his knife or whatever tool he might be in the mood to use, you know. Could be a melon baller, could be, you name it. There's much in the ways of murder that our dearly beloved Lecter is capable of. He is the artiste as far as matters of human dismantlement go. So, at any rate, so Will Graham breaks down the scene, again going through the process of exploring the design, and that was a really uncomfortable scene to watch. I mean, I was curious to see what exactly would become of Beverly, and the way that it was handled and broken down in Will's mind was especially visceral, as we're watching him in his head choke out someone whom we've come to feel fondly for, and who Will himself feels fondly for, kind of like what happened with his imaginings of Abigail in the previous season. But so that it was all a deeply unsettling process. And you know, the whole reason that Jack brought Will out to even go through this, to even make the painting and the blueprints, was to get answers. And obviously this has officially gotten very much personal for him. So he's not exactly looking for fun little metaphors and teases thrown his way, but the approach that Will Graham is taking in regards to Jack is the acknowledgement that he can't just come outright and, you know, and put up all the flashing neon arrows on Hannibal. That's not gonna fly, and it's not gonna get people to where they need to be to know that this is our man, this is our main gun. And so what he tells Jack is that he needs to come to have his connection to the Ripper, just as Beverly ultimately ended up having hers. And so he is vague and yet spot on, as we know exactly what he is up to. And then of course later on Will even intentionally gets the attention of Freddie Lowndes in order to make a connection with his little fanboy, I suppose you will say, the one who killed the bailiff, but not the judge. And so he is working at every angle to figure out how he can make contact with Hannibal again, and how he can have his way with things, additionally getting under Chilton's skin as well. And I've really come to enjoy the performances of the actor who plays Dr. Frederick Chilton, because just the way that his facial expressions, his mannerisms, the way that he carries himself, he is a straight diva, and we pretty much knew that from the start. But in getting to see all of his continued exchanges with Hannibal, the way that he's trying to slowly tease things out of Will, but Will has complete and utter control of what he lets Chilton in on, and every time it's this sort of seduction, and he just preys so heavily on this guy's ego. It is the central core of his being, and Will is working it to the max. And I love seeing that. I love seeing Will's smiles as he knows that he is making progress. He is working his way across the chessboard to where he needs to be, and trying to get everyone else to be where they need to be. So what he does with Chilton, of course, is he gets Gideon back in the picture, which, you know, that was kind of like a raising from the dead moment for me there, because as far as we knew, he had been shot down, but people have a way of coming back, you know. I watch The Walking Dead. I'm used to reanimation. of things that you thought were gone. Anyway, so Will has some very fascinating little exchanges with Gideon, who is also delightfully vague with Alana and with Hannibal as well, and there's just so much that's veiled, and every conversation is just pregnant with this, like, the accusations and it's all about the game. So Will is doing everything he possibly can to make contact with the outside world, and he finds a very interesting kind of companion in the disorderly, who the actor playing him did a tremendous job of just giving us the willies, and he played out the crazy with quite a bit of finesse. So hats off to you, my man. It made for an entertaining watch, and he kind of reminded me sort of a Harley Quinn kind of figure, actually, as he spoke about how he became a part of this world that he believes that Will is as well. Hence the disorderly's participation or interruption of Will's legal process in admiration of what he believes that Will has done. So he not only takes from Will's identity, which is actually Hannibal's, but ultimately in the end, when he takes Will up on his little request, he actually tries to take away the identity of Hannibal himself, working his way from Will, who is Hannibal's canvas, to the artist himself, and putting him in this crucifixion position. That the grandioseness of that scale reminds us of the way that the judge was murdered in that previous episode. Strung up and laid bare. And so I mean, we knew that when the disorderly went for a little swim with his cannibal friend, that he wasn't just gonna let, shoot the dart in and let this guy sink to the depths. He was going to bring him back up to have his own tableau of sorts as well. And it wasn't, and if we're looking at Hannibal Lecter as the god of this universe, of this sort of Christ-like figure unto himself, then there is a lot of meaning in this arrangement, in the way that he is bound up, and of course, everyone's astir on the internet about the fan service and the the Speedo and we all saw, we did, and that Mads Mikkelsen, or Mads Mikkelsen as his name is technically pronounced, he is a timeless man of handsomeness. So appreciate that if you can, while he is tottering on the death bucket, attempting not to kick it. But a very tense scene, and of course there's a very extreme sense of irony, which we have at the very beginning of the episode, when Hannibal is having breakfast with Jack, and he's all low down in his sweater as well. They're in this very casual, friendly, amicable environment. It's really intimate. And then of course at the end too, Jack is the one to swoop in and save the day. Yet another really intimate situation, kind of, growing out of necessity. But as at the very end, we see that Jack is stuck holding Hannibal up just so he doesn't totally choke out until, everything comes back together, and Hannibal gathers up his bearings and screws Will's lady friend, and things just get exciting. We're about to have quite a wave of drama. about to crash on the shore here. So I mean, I can't help but make mention of the preview for next week. As if Hannibal wasn't fighting dirty before. I mean, well, it really hasn't been fighting this whole time. Again, he's the artist. He's making these creations. He's playing a game. It's all in great sport. Until, of course, he finds out that his best friend, sick to fanboy on him to do his dark bidding. Well, Hannibal's gonna do a dark bidding of his own as well, and I mean, I'll be curious to see now that it appears that Jack is starting to pay attention to what Will is trying to hint at. That Will is slowly pulling him in, and while he wants to shed the light on the situation, again, he needs to make sure that the people who have the power to end the insanity are actually interested and are actually receptive, you know? And for Beverly, she was, because there was evidence afoot. So, you know, we've got Jack apparently trying to snag some goods from the party, at which he cannot stay, and he takes it to the lab. But, I mean, you'd think that Hannibal's going to anticipate that, you know, and that maybe, just maybe, he actually headed to the store to have, you know, a little, just in case somebody wants to take home the leftovers and enjoy them at the lab, you know. But it's gonna be a really interesting and fascinating ride, and again, an incredibly operatic, enormous, dramatic episode that deeply unsettled and provoked, and the music was just so overwhelming at times, so wild that it was just, I don't fully know how to describe this week's episode. It had me reeling on so many levels. So let me know what you think of everything that transpired. Thanks so much for watching. Fill in the gaps, because I know that they're there. Because we've got Hannibal, we've got Jack and Will and Alana and Freddie and Chilton and all the moving pieces. So I mean, there's a lot more dialogue and thought processes and the weirdness that kind of makes us feel like, you know, Alice in Wonderland, or Will in Wonderland. I kind of like the ring of that, but not so much wondrous as it is pure madness. But it's interesting how all these characters are falling into these gray areas, and that no one is necessarily to be pitied at this point anymore. Not even Will Graham in this case. He is taking really drastic and controversial measures to do what he needs to, but it's like Gideon said, if he wants to get him, and this is the only form of justice that he can really put himself behind, if he wants to get Lecter, he's gonna have to kill him. But we'll see what becomes of the bromance after this discovery on Hannibal's part, and as he just tenuously weaves himself through the community and gets ready for a Gatsby-sized bash and sort of his act of revenge. They're both sort of working in revenge against each other. So it's the tension surmounts. I can't wait for more. So you guys take care and keep your appetites good and fresh. And I'll be back before you know it.